The figures we often admire as the pioneers of law, politics, and democracy were also deeply immersed in a world of intoxicants. From emperors to foot soldiers, drug use cut across every layer of Roman society. Life within the empire was anything but easy. War, famine, disease, and natural disasters cast long shadows over daily existence. In the face of such hardship, the Romans often sought refuge not only in religion or entertainment, but in substances that alter the mind. Some of the same plants they relied on for medicine and healing also provided vivid, dreamlike escapes from reality. And in Rome, much like today, anything that brought euphoria or temporary release from pain quickly became popular. Alcohol, cannabis, opiates, and hallucinogenic fungi all found their way into Roman cups, kitchens, and ceremonies. There was no taboo, no moral outrage surrounding their use. Getting high was simply another thread woven into Roman life. Welcome to the Roman Empire, a civilization powered not just by legions and politics, but also by drugs. Loaded. The Romans were not merely consumers of these substances. They were cultivators, traders, and even enthusiastic promoters. Drugs were sold openly in markets across the empire, displayed alongside spices and herbs. They were taken as medicine for ailments ranging from toothaches to insomnia, but just as often they were enjoyed for leisure. Demand was high, and with demand came dealers. These sellers did not hide their trade. On the contrary, they advised customers on dosage, preparation methods, and the kind of experience one could expect. Drugs were infused into oils, crushed into powders, or mixed into wines. Far from the shadowy backroom transactions we might picture today, this was commerce carried out under the sun. The opium poppy was especially common, grown in gardens right beside ordinary plants like lavender or lettuce. Even poets gave cultivation tips. Virgil, in the 1st century, described how opium poppies should ideally be planted around the autumn equinox, the time when daylight and darkness stood in perfect balance. The implication was clear: these plants were not only a part of agriculture, but of daily Roman culture. Little old wine drinker me. See, draught of living death. While wine was everywhere, opium was something more potent, something that inspired both fascination and fear. Roman doctors were well aware of its dual nature. A healer in small doses, a killer in excess as early as the 2nd century BC. Greek physicians working in Rome documented the effect of opium overdose. Nicander Colophon described how victims would fall into a terrifying state. Their eyelids heavy and unmoving, sweat soaking their bodies, lips swollen, breathing shallow and cold. Sometimes a bluish tint in the nails or nostrils signaled that death was near. Another physician, Dioscorides, remembered as a father of pharmacognosy, was blunt in his description: it kills. He also explained the various medical uses of opium, from treating epilepsy and liver ailments to numbing the pain of scorpion stings. Despite its dangers, Romans experimented with recovery methods for overdose victims. Nicander suggested rousing the unconscious with shouts, shaking, or even slapping the face, desperate measures to pull someone back from the edge of death. Pliny the Elder wrote that opium was prescribed for ailments as varied as elephantiasis, abscesses, and fevers. Yet everyone who used it knew that it was a dangerous ally, a medicine that could easily turn into a poison. The Romans lived with this paradox every day. Opium was a comfort, a cure, and a curse, sometimes all at once. I can't get no sleep. For many Romans, sleeplessness was a constant struggle, and opium became one of the most common remedies. Nowhere is this more apparent than in the case of Emperor Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king whose writings on Stoicism remain influential even today. Aurelius valued self-control and moderation, yet even he relied on carefully measured doses of opium to rest at night. According to his physician Galen, the emperor mixed opium with honey, creating a sweet electuary that could be adjusted in strength depending on his needs. The dosage was supervised daily to ensure he gained the benefits of sleep without dulling his judgment as ruler of the empire. Far from being reckless, Marcus Aurelius approached the drug like a connoisseur. He could distinguish good opium from bad and adjusted his intake, depending on the demands of his schedule. In Galen's account, the emperor remained a clear-headed and energetic leader, using the drug not as an escape, but as a tool to maintain his responsibilities. Yet others turned to opium for darker reasons. In the Roman world, suicide was not illegal nor stigmatized. Many of the elderly or chronically ill chose to leave life peacefully by slipping away on a gentle tide of opium-induced sleep. The drug also became a weapon. Dissolved in wine, it served as a discreet poison. One notorious case is that of Britannicus, the teenage stepbrother of Emperor Nero. In 55 AD at a banquet, Britannicus was given a drink laced with a lethal dose of opiates prepared by the infamous poisoner Locusta. According to Tacitus, he quickly lost his voice, slipped into unconsciousness, and died. Clearing the way for Nero's unchallenged rule that in Rome, opium was a medicine, a luxury, an aid to philosophy, a means of suicide, and even a tool of political murder. Its influence reached from the humblest insomniac to the most powerful emperor. Euphoria. Beyond wine and opium, the Romans experimented with a wide variety of plants known for their mind-altering effects. Some of these substances offered fleeting bliss, others hallucinations, and some a descent into madness. Plants like mandrake, belladonna, henbane, and wormwood were well known for producing altered states of consciousness. When ingested, burned, or brewed, these herbs released alkaloids that could cause euphoria, delirium, and sometimes terrifying visions. Wormwood, in particular, was a favorite. Romans believed it sharpened the mind and eased anxiety. They often infused into wine, creating a bitter but stimulating drink. Pliny the Elder noted that physicians prescribed wormwood wine perhaps too liberally, and yet he himself detailed recipes for preparing it. Modern science tells us why it was dangerous. Wormwood contains thujone, a neurotoxin capable of causing seizures in high doses. But to the Romans, it was simply another path to confidence, creativity, and pleasure. Because of its harsh taste and smell, wormwood was usually sweetened with honey. Romans often mixed multiple drugs together into intoxicating cocktails. Evidence from an ancient pharmacy near Pompeii shows traces of wine once laced with cannabis, opium, and henbane, a potent mixture designed to transport the drinker far from ordinary reality. Not all experiments ended well. The poet Lucretius, according to legend, consumed a dose of wormwood given to him by his wife that drove him into bouts of insanity. Whether intentional poisoning or tragic accident, the story highlights how thin the line was between medicine and madness. Even seemingly harmless plants held hidden dangers. The daffodil, which we now associate with spring, was used by Romans for its pain-killing effects, but also caused delirium when consumed. And then there were mushrooms, which Romans considered both a delicacy and a drug. Some varieties contained psychoactive compounds that triggered powerful hallucinations, experiences sought after by elites and commoners alike. The empire's appetite for euphoria wasn't limited to plants. The so-called dream fish, a type of Mediterranean sea bream, was believed to cause vivid hallucinations when eaten, whether in a goblet, a garden, or on a dinner plate. The Romans found countless ways to push the boundaries of perception by the 1st century BC. Thinkers like Theophrastus had already noticed the human capacity to build tolerance to drugs. This observation, that larger and larger doses were required to achieve the same effects, implies that the Romans were well aware of the dangers of addiction, even if they lacked the word for it. The high life. Long before Rome, humanity had discovered hemp. This ancient plant, originating in Asia, was carried westward by migrating peoples and eventually reached Europe in the Bronze Age. By the time of the Roman Empire, it had been used for over 5,000 years. Hemp was a versatile wonder. Its fibers became ropes, sails, and clothing, essential materials for daily life and military campaigns. But its flowers and resin were something else entirely, producing psychoactive effects that fascinated the Romans just as much as its practical uses. It's likely that marijuana entered the Roman world through trade with the Scythians, a nomadic people from the steppes of Iran. The Greek historian Herodotus famously described their ritual. Seeds of hemp were thrown onto hot stones, filling tents with thick smoke. The Scythians would crawl beneath the coverings, inhaling deeply, and emerge howling with joy. The Romans adopted similar practices. Instead of smoking rolled joints, an image familiar today, they used fumigation, burning cannabis and other herbs, then inhaling the vapors. Incense, resins, and hemp smoke often mingled in ritual spaces and feasting halls, producing intoxicating atmospheres. Roman physicians took note. Dioscorides, who served with Nero's army, wrote about cannabis as both a medicine and a disruptor of the body's balance. In large doses, he warned, it caused problems with libido, making it a useful treatment for those who struggle to control their impulses. Pliny the Elder also documented hemp's medicinal uses. Its juice, he wrote, could numb pain, ease arthritis, and even calm the stomachs of livestock. But he also acknowledged its intoxicating powers. In his natural history, he referred to it as the laughing weed, describing how it sparked joy when mixed with wine at tea parties. Cannabis was not taboo. Galen, the physician, recorded that it was freely shared, sparking laughter and cheer among guests. Unlike opium, which carried a reputation for danger, cannabis was celebrated as a more playful indulgence. The empire's relationship with hemp reflected its broader approach to drugs, practical, experimental, and unashamed. These substances were not hidden in shadows, but woven openly into the fabric of Roman culture. Conclusion: the Roman Empire was a world of paradoxes. Strict laws and rampant corruption, incredible achievements and brutal wars, philosophical wisdom and reckless indulgence. Drugs fit seamlessly into this paradox. They were medicine and poison, tools of healing and instruments of murder, sources of joy and seeds of addiction. From the vineyard of Italy to the markets of Pompeii, from the chambers of emperors to the tents of soldiers, substances like wine, opium, cannabis, and hallucinogens shaped the daily rhythm of life. Romans celebrated them in festivals, prescribed them in treatments, and abused them in pursuit of escape. In studying the empire, we often focus on its politics, its wars, its monuments, and its downfall. Yet behind all that stood real people, people who sought relief from pain, pleasure from intoxication, and visions beyond the ordinary. Drugs, in many ways, fueled Rome just as much as its armies and its economy did. Thank you for joining this journey into the intoxicating underworld of the Roman Empire. If you enjoyed exploring this hidden side of history, be sure to subscribe for more stories each week. Until next time, may your days be clear and your nights restful. Cheers.